Teddy, can you look at the camera? No, can you look at the camera? There we go. Now we can say, welcome to Pet Talk with Anna and Teddy, who is very keen to be rewarded for the good camera work that he's just performed. Teddy, is there anything else you wanted to say? You sit up, please. You sit up. That's right. Good. Is there anything you want to say? Oh, good. Well done. That's Teddy's welcome to Pet Talk. Right then. So we would both like to welcome Chantal, Karyta, who is a behaviorist. Now, you will remember that last time we saw her, we were talking about agility, but this time we are talking about separation anxiety, which is something that Teddy and I have some experience of. So Chantal, would you like to tell us a little bit, I guess, first off, what is separation anxiety?
Okay, so well, first of all, it's lovely to see you again. But yeah, so separation anxiety, you're probably hearing like the words quite a bit at the moment. So it's basically a huge kind of panic disorder that just causes intense emotional suffering. So quite often it's when the dog does not want to be alone. So it can either be a fear of being left alone completely, which is actually termed as like isolation distress, or you've got separation anxiety, which is actually a fear of being left from one particular person. So there can be like a subset of different kind of behaviors that the dog exhibits when left home alone and when they're not happy. So when they kind of go over threshold, if you like, they can start displaying a lot of like different like anxiety kind of behaviors. And it's almost kind of the equivalent of like a human panic attack or an anxiety attack. So if you've ever had one of those, or if you know people that have had those before, you know how debilitating it is and how kind of scary it is as well. So so it is actually quite a serious, fearful disorder that dogs can struggle with.
I think, there's what I have with Teddy, and I think many people will relate to this, is he actually just doesn't want to be without me.
Yeah.
We begin to talk about him being alone, because he doesn't want to be without me. Mm-hmm. And he could be very happy with his daddy, he could be with his friends, but I need to be there. And I think people don't understand how serious it is. And they think it's me, that I'm doing something, or Teddy, within his routine, he has become accustomed to being without me at certain times a day, because we've worked on this. We've really worked on this.
Yes. Yeah.
Within his routine, he is happy if I'm working and I have a client in the house. Mm-hmm. He's not allowed in the room with me. It's been from day one. He hasn't been allowed. And so he's downstairs, he's in the kitchen, he's perfectly comfortable, but it's very clear that when I return, it's like, oh, thank God that's over. It's an ordeal that he has learned to put up with. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Equally, if I leave the house to go to my allotment, he's fine. Again, he's with his daddy. We're not asking him to be alone. Both of us work from home. It's not an issue, but it's me. And if I overstay the allotted time, it's like looking at the clock and he's going, well, where is she? Shouldn't we got a rescue party? She's late. What's going on? So it's very clear that he's got accustomed, he's coped, but he's not thrilled. And if I leave the house without him, I call it an unscheduled disappearance.
Yeah.
Absolute meltdown. And I've gone from wondering whether it's frustration because he feels like he's missing out. I think if I'm in the front garden working on the garden and he knows I'm there, that's frustration. I can hear it.
Yeah.
It's not the case. So it's certain circumstances he's learned. if I get dropped off at a train station, he's fine. So he comes home with his daddy and he knows, oh, well, she's gone. I'm going to have to endure this. Nothing I can really do about it.
Yeah.
But you can see that when I get home, it's not just the normal joy that dogs have of being, the pack being reunited. It's not that. It's relief as well. So I think people have to understand that there is something going on here with dogs, and it's not as simple as, oh, leave him alone, he'll get used to it.
Yeah.
Because producing real cortisol levels really go up, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And as you know, like high cortisol levels is not good for stress, for long-term health or anything like that. And like you say, when a dog is particularly attached to one member of the family, it tends to be like the primary caregiver as well. So you probably do. I know you do so much with Teddy anyway. You do so much training and everything with him, the feeding, walking, etc. So he's got such a strong bond with you. And if you think we've bred dogs for thousands and thousands of years to be with us and to work with us. So I even think dogs that don't necessarily have a separation related, disorder, they still show some element of disappointment when the owner does leave the house. But some dogs can just be calm and accept it, whereas dogs that really struggle with it just can't at all, and they just become so stressed. And like you say, it's not necessarily something that they do grow out of. Again, I think if you think of something that you're really fearful of, it takes a process to get over that fear. It's not just a case of, just letting them cry it out or leaving them to it, etc. Because, I've had clients' dogs that have cried and howled for hours and hours, before they started working on it. And if anything, it can actually make the dog worse as well, because quite often then the dogs start to preempt when the owners are going out. So for example, you have that kind of typical departure routine that we do. We start rushing around the house, we pick up the keys, put on our shoes, pick up our bags, etc. So quite often dogs with separation anxiety are already stressed way before the owners even have left the house. So it is a really, really big problem, and it quite often goes unseen as well. I saw a study once, and they said they found that between 22% and 55% of the general dog population are believed to show signs of separation anxiety, which is actually, a huge amount of dogs suffering.
Yeah. In fact, I've seen a study that they did where I think it was 70% of the dogs that appeared to not have a problem had cortisol levels that were very high while their pack was away. And that makes complete sense, because these are pack animals. They're not designed to be on their own. We're asking a lot of them to be on their own. And I think, there's got to be some compassion on our part. We're not even asking Teddy to be alone. We don't have to ask him to be alone. We're not interested in going anywhere without him. He's part of us. And so from that point of view, he's lucky and we're lucky. So that's okay. But it's very clear that his attachment to me, it's got a little bit easier, because in the last year he spent more time with his daddy, and so he is willingly spending more time away from me within the house.
That's good. That's really good.
And he can, when he's hot, choose to be in a room that's cooler to the room that we're in. So he can be on his own. So I now know that actually the truth of the matter is he can be on his own, but he wants to be. And I think, okay, that's fair enough. He doesn't want to be. So it's a tricky balance, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as well, like a lot of people think, like, especially if you have like a dog that follows you around the house. So that dog that just disappeared off my lap, Splash, for example, he will follow me absolutely everywhere. Even if I get up at 2 a.m., he's there by me. But actually when I leave the house, he's actually fine. Whereas I have had dogs before with separation anxiety, that obviously then can't cope when I do, if I was to leave the house. So there can be certain things that a dog, might do in the house that you then think, oh gosh, my dog's got a separation issue. But actually, when you leave the house, they cope a lot better with it. So, but every dog is really different. What goes for one dog isn't necessarily works for another dog, for example. So it's just about kind of trying to determine what behaviors your dog does when anxious, and then when we're dealing with separation anxiety as well, it's really important that we need to be able to watch the dog the whole time as well through like dog cameras. I mean, technology now is so good. You can, do those kinds of things, because again, I've had clients where they say stuff like, they leave the dog with a Kong and then they go out, and because the dog doesn't vocalize or anything like that, and then the dog, the owner comes back and the dog then suddenly starts eating their Kong, for example, the owner doesn't realize that there's a problem. Whereas actually when you look at the camera, the dog might be pacing, it might be trembling, it might be panting, not interested in their Kong at all. And then the moment they hear the owner's car coming down the road or into the driveway, the dog just feels relief again and is like, okay, now I can eat my Kong again. And the owner comes in, sees the dog eating the Kong and doesn't think that there's a problem at all. So
whereas I'd be looking at that and be going, he hasn't eaten that. What's going on?
Yeah, because, absolutely. Yeah.
Most dogs given a Kong are going to demolish it fairly. If you back and that Kong is not finished, then why is he off his food during while I'm out would be the question I'd be asking. So the protocols are very, very gentle and gradual in getting the dog to pick up confidence, aren't they?
Yes. So there's a few things that you really need for the dog to kind of succeed with separation anxiety. I think a lot of people really struggle with it because it's probably the behavior problem that takes the longest to kind of try and resolve. You're looking at months rather than weeks. So the first thing is to make sure that the dog is never over threshold in the first place. So we never want the dog to be feeling fear at all during any part of the training. So you're always going to get a lot more out of it if the dog is only left in these kind of training absences. And then say if you do need to go out for longer than what the dog can cope with, to make sure the dog is with someone, whether that's a dog sitter, family friend, neighbor. There's lots of different options that you can have these days, just to kind of make sure that the dog isn't feeling fear. That's so important. And then the only real process that's like, there's been lots of studies done on separation anxiety, and the only known method to work is systematic desensitization. So that's basically, and you use it for humans as well, it's a form of exposure therapy where the dog is exposed to absences that they can cope with, and then it's very, very gradually increased over time. With some of my clients, they can't even get out of the door to begin with, so we work on that exercise first, for example. I normally as well, when dealing with absences, I take away all like your typical departure cues, so things like picking up the keys, because especially that one is a massive kind of trigger. So I work solely on just working on the absence first without any kind of departure cues. And then once the dog is at a point where they've got a good duration of time, then I start to bring in the departure cues one by one. But it's not just a case of just increasing it every day. For example, dogs are emotional beings. So very much look at like the dog's whole lifestyle. Dogs have bad days in the same way that we do. you know, like they might have a scary incident down the park, for example, you know, and that might affect their separation training, or if they're sick, for example, or, you know, if they've had to have an operation, or if they're, you know, there's quite a strong correlation between dogs with separation anxiety and with noise phobias as well. So it's not just a case of looking at the separation anxiety itself, it's a case of just looking at the dog's whole general lifestyle, you know, routine. I've had clients before that they've had dogs with separation anxiety, but then they've been really fearful of other people as well. So we've had to work on that in order to make sure that the dog is okay with being left with other people, for example. You know, so there's a whole lot to it. It's that's why it's such a complex behavior issue to deal with. So
to what extent do you think that there is something here about building confidence in the dog? So all those things that we would normally be doing, excuse me, to build confidence, how important do you think that is in helping to address this issue?
Yeah, no, extremely important. Like, I obviously still deal with a lot of puppy clients as well, and I always say to them, you know, this should like be prioritized as much as the toilet training and teaching them, you know, they've normally already taught their dogs to sit and paw by the time they come to me, but they normally then haven't done any separation training. So it's something that, you know, dogs need to kind of learn how to kind of deal with. And for some dogs, they're absolutely fine. Other dogs just, you know, are not. I mean, a lot of dogs have been struggling since lockdown because now everyone is working from home, and even the dogs that were fine before lockdown have almost just forgotten to be alone now because they haven't needed to be. So, you know, some of my clients have dogs like that and are struggling, or there's been a lot of like puppies bought over lockdown as well that again have never learned to be left alone. But sometimes it can be a genetic thing as well. You know, it's not necessarily just like a learned thing. You know, sometimes you can still do the separation training, but the puppy still struggles, you know, with it. So in a lot of cases, like actually speaking to the vet and getting meds can actually really help with a lot of dogs as well. So yes.
I was just listening to you and I was thinking, we knew we were in trouble with Teddy on this count because we had a playpen for him in the kitchen, and he couldn't bear to be. Now, keeping in mind the playpen, he could see through. He's in the room with us. He can, but he couldn't bear to be in there unless he was sleeping. Put him in there, you know, just for safety while we were cooking.
Yes.
But he hated it, absolutely hated it. And I knew we were in trouble because he would actually shake. He would be trembling. And what do? We would say, what do? We take him out. He gets used to the fact that if he's hot, and now I think I would have redone that whole period, and instead of putting him in there, have him out and gradually put him in there. But it wasn't, that wasn't the purpose of the playpen.
No, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
now back, I think I would have redone that, because he was fine. It's interesting, he was fine in a crate in the room at bedtime. So and again, the process by which he learned to sleep by himself. But that was such a gentle process that we did. You know, and again, this whole thing about letting puppies, you know, cry at night.
Absolutely. Especially when they're puppies, you know, they've been taken from everything that they've known, their mom, their siblings, to a new house, new people, potentially being the only dog. Just having the expectation that they should sleep on their own, you know, downstairs at night is, it's terrifying for a lot of puppies. So it's good that you introduced him in the gradual way of doing that. Definitely
a good thing, because I mean, obviously it was a good thing, but I think training him to sleep on his own, that was the only thing that he did on his own. But thinking back, the training we did for that
Yeah.
probably is what we should have done with the playpen. But we didn't, again, because we needed him to be in the playpen for his safety.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, and we were there, it never occurred to us
Yeah, absolutely.
that, okay, forget what the playpen was for originally, but you've got a different problem here. Adjust to that and work with it so that he can be in there on his own, and so on. So it's if they're all, hindsight is a marvelous thing, and the next puppy we have, if that starts to happen, then that's exactly what we will do. But it's a funny thing. I think, as I said, the other thing that I've noticed, of course, is that having his daddy more involved in his daily life has made him more comfortable and not have to be around me all the time. Because he's worked out the daddy can be fun too. And and that good things come from there as well. So he's been playing a lot more with daddy in the last year to year and a half. And that and that's been really great. So that, again, that tells you something, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, definitely with like the hyper attachment with you, it's, I get a lot of clients that have that problem. And like you say, it's just about making other people fun and making good stuff come from other members of the household or extended family or dog walkers or whoever it is that, is going to be having your dog when you can't. And it's just about building up those positive associations, and then gradually over time, like you say, the dog learns, oh, okay, these people are fun too, and they're happy to kind of go with them. So dogs are very easily bought, especially when it comes to food and things. So you can do things like getting other people to feed your dogs, to walk your dogs, play with your dogs, like just basically anything fun, get them coming from get it coming from the other person. So like you say, the dog then starts to build up a stronger bond with them as well.
I think, you were saying, dogs are very easily bought. I think they are. What they need to know is that their needs are going to be met. That's what they need to know, because the way in which we, I guess, raise them, we make them entirely dependent on us. It's a little bit some ways, because dogs are perfectly capable of being independent in the wild and do without us, but when they come into our homes, they are entirely dependent on us.
Absolutely.
So it's not surprising, in a sense, that they're going to panic if the source of everything that's wonderful for them disappears. They don't know. You were talking about the cues about leaving home and everything. I tried that. It was worse. It was so much worse for him. What works for him is me saying to him, okay, I'm going out now and I'll be back. And then he kind of goes, all right. What he hates is having surprises sprung on him.
Yes, absolutely. And like you say, you said he's used to you leaving at certain times to do certain things. And again, what you were saying as well about he's fine sleeping in the crate at night on his own. And again, a lot of clients with dogs with separation anxiety are fine in the crate, but they don't generalize that to daytime episodes as well. And the nighttime is very routine. It's the same thing that happens every night and stuff, so they know it's safe, whereas during the day it's completely different. So
I wonder whether taking them from their family at 8 weeks, whether that contributes to this, because the journey home when Teddy was a puppy at 8 weeks, when we went to collect him, what we're effectively doing is we're kidnapping them. We're taking them away from everything that's familiar. I think that if we had lived closer to the breeder, I would have been there every day, letting him get to know me and that would have been different, but that's practical. And but I really felt it. I felt his fear once he realized that this was serious. He wasn't going back to where he was coming from. We were now in the car for about 10 minutes and he didn't know what was going on. So two fun strangers. Now it got serious. And so I could feel the panic, and he was panting heavily. He was, even though I'd never had a dog before, I could see this puppy was stressed. And so, but what he did on that journey is he clung to me. In his brain switched and said, right, she's nice. If I stick to her like glue, and I do wonder, because it's such a formative time, whether that idea imprinted itself.
Yeah, and funny you say that. Actually, I don't know whether it's been studied with separation anxiety, but there has been studies done on kittens and puppies. And I remember seeing a study on kittens that if they left their mother later, at like say the age of 13 weeks, they grew up to be less aggressive and have less behavior problems. And I'm sure the same would definitely be for puppies as well. But the thing is, by the time the puppy's 12, 13 weeks, people want that cute 8-week-old kind of puppy face and stuff, don't they? They've already grown quite a lot, like a month later. But yeah, it's interesting. It definitely is interesting. And I think definitely it can play a part.
I just remember that memory, I think, will be forever very firmly engraved in memory, in my mind, because firstly, it was such an emotional time for us, to be collected, because obviously we were dying for that day. Everybody puppy will know what it's like when you're counting the days, and then
I know, it's so exciting, isn't it?
Exactly. Already that was the case. So for that reason alone, it would be a very important memory. But it's also an important memory because I really felt at the time that something important was happening to him. And I know that when we got home, he would not let me out of his sight.
By the time
we got home, his mind was made up that I was the source. And that was before I'd ever fed him or anything. It was, give him space in the car to and held him when he was unhappy and all of that. So, but that was I really, that I would strongly suspect that this plays a part in this.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it definitely does. Yeah, and I'm sure there are studies on it. I'll have to go and have a look and stuff. But yeah, no, definitely.
What would you recommend as a starting point? Because we're talking about today we've been talking about two aspects of separation anxiety. We've been talking hyper-attachment to one individual, the primary carer, and we've also been talking about the home alone, being able to spend time alone. So we kind of have already said that if it's a hyper thing, then perhaps, encouraging other people, good things, that's great. Where would we start if it was an issue of being home alone?
Okay, so first thing, as I say, you have to kind of create a network of people around you that can have your dog for you, because as I say, this is one of the things that it can take months to resolve. And I think a lot of people now, especially as lockdowns just finished, they don't want to be in another lockdown because they can't leave because of the dog and so on. So one of the first things I would definitely get all my clients to do is just, create a network of people that you can rely on to have your dog at random times during the week. If you do need to go out, dog walkers, sitters, neighbors, family, friends, etc., just so you have a variety of different people that you can kind of call upon, because that will really, really help. A lot of my clients, this can be quite difficult emotionally for them as well as the dog. So it's really important that the owner's kind of needs are being met and stuff as well, you know, because again, we are sociable. So we do need to go out and just go to the shops as well, you know, go to the post office or just to do something like that. So that'll be the first thing. We also need to determine what your dog's baseline is. So what is like their consistent amount of time that they can do, regardless of like what time of day it is. Okay, because again, like different dogs will do well at certain times of day. So there might be a time of day where they're a bit more relaxed, perhaps a bit more sleepy, and the owners can go out longer for then, as opposed to when the dogs have got a lot more energy and so on, the owners might not be able to go out, you know, for as long during that time. So again, technology is really important here. So you definitely need like a dog cam, or there's lots of different types of web-based apps or like phone apps that you can get that you can just download for free, and you can use something like your tablet as a camera, and then you can log in and go out on your phone and just observe your dog. So that is really handy. Or you can even do things as well, like set up a Zoom meeting, for example, between your laptop and your phone, and use the laptop as the camera. You go out the front door and just observe, you know, what the dog does. You want to make sure though that the dog is never showing any signs of anxiety. So it's really, really important to like read your dog's body language, and be able to tell the moment your dog starts kind of looking or feeling a little bit anxious, because quite often you hear about like the severe behaviors of separation anxiety, like the toileting, the being destructive, the howling, you know, vocalizations, that kind of thing. But there's a lot more milder case, like signs of anxiety, even before the dog gets to that. And it can be really subtle. So it might be something like a lip lick, for example, or could be like a panting type behavior. And again, different dogs do different things. So, you know, predominantly a lot of my clients have got, like, I deal with separation anxiety a lot, and my clients' dogs all do completely different things. You know, so for one, I've got one client who's a cockapoo actually, and when his owner goes out now, he just waits and sits by the front door, but he generally kind of sits by the front door at home anyway, even when his owner is in. So for him, that's not like a stressy behavior. Whereas say for some of my other clients' dogs, them moving towards the door is a sign that they're getting stressed. Okay, so there's no kind of one size fits all in terms of like behavior. An example. So it's kind of really important to like learn to read your dog, because again, that's one thing my clients say to me, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize my dog did this. And, you know, because they're watching their dog so much more. And dogs, that's how they communicate, is through body language. So you learn so much, but you need to be able to tell the signs the moment your dog is starting to kind of get anxious, and get back to them before those signs start. Desensitization only works if there's no fear included in the training at all. So that's really, really important. And it's just working out what your baseline is. And I say, if you can't even get out of the door, then we need to work on desensitizing the door to begin with. Also, go on, sorry, you're going to say something.
I'm going to ask, would that include working out whether the dog is comfortable being in the room without you? So would you start to work on just them being able to be alone in the house, in a different part of the house? Would that be part of it?
It can be for some dogs and not for others. See, again, some dogs like that don't have separation anxiety when owners leave the house can have it when you're in the house, for example. You know, or it can be kind of like vice versa as well. Some dogs are fine as long as they know the owner's in the house, and then the moment they leave out the front door, that's when they start to become fearful. So again, it's a real no one size fits all in terms of this, which I think it can be quite difficult to try and resolve sometimes as well. So yes.
That's asked because it's a good illustration of how every dog is individual.
Yeah, absolutely. No, definitely. You know, they're emotional beings, the same as us, you know, so it's and they're all completely different. You know, I've got 5 dogs and their personalities are all completely different. You know, so, and you get to know their characters and everything. So yes. Another thing I was going to say as well is, say, as I was talking about the Kongs earlier, a lot of people think that they can use food to try and resolve the problem. But if you think about, you know, what I said, that dogs are in pure panic when they do go over thresholds and the owner does leave for longer than what they can cope with. So using food doesn't resolve the issue at all. If you think about, you know, when you've been in a really fearful experience or a fearful situation, the last thing you're thinking about is wanting to eat. You know, your digestive system actually shuts down because all your body is thinking about is like survival. You know, it's just like a natural instinct. Because I get a lot of people again that say to me, you know, oh, we've tried leaving a Kong, he doesn't want his chew, and you know, and hopefully that explains why, because dogs just don't want to eat when they're scared. Same as us, really.
No, I mean, many of us feel like throwing up when we're scared. So
exactly, yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're really nervous, you know, you don't want to eat or anything, do you? So
no, it's a wonderful thing that we're able to talk about this, and I really hope that it's giving people some ideas. I've got one last question for you. Some people think the solution is to get another dog. What do you think?
Well, I get asked this question a lot. So I would say to people, only get another dog if you genuinely want another dog. You know, don't get one just in the hope that it's going to sort out your dog separation anxiety, because I have clients that do that and then they come to me with then 2 dogs with separation anxiety. You know, quite often the dog is wanting to be with a human as opposed to another dog. For some dogs it can work, but the percentages aren't, you know, kind of high. And then obviously you've got the whole training of the other dog, whether it is a rescue or whether it's a puppy. You know, you might have behavior training to do with puppies, you know, how much training that is as well. So you've got to do a lot of that as well. You know, it's things like double the finances in terms of food, boarding, daycare, you know, like who's going to look after your dogs when you're on holiday, etc., that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that you need to think about. But say for the majority of dogs, they want their human. They don't necessarily want to be with another dog.
That's right. The other dog's not going to provide them with food.
No, absolutely. And I get as well a lot of dogs actually who's perhaps there's an older dog that has passed away, and then the owners bring in a new dog thinking that that's going to resolve it, but actually the dog, you know, that doesn't help either, because if you think about, you know, someone in your family living in your house passing away and then someone new coming to live with you, it's not going to make you feel better because you don't have that bond with them. Does that make sense? So
it's about who they're attached to.
Yeah.
And I was being a bit flippant when I said that the other dog's not going to provide them with food. But what I meant was the other dog is not going to substitute the primary carer. And that's the attachment that the dog has, is to the person who is their primary carer. And if we put this in human terms, which I think is very applicable to dogs, because as they produce cortisol in the same way that we do, they also produce oxytocin in the same way. This is all love relationship, and the person they love is not going to be substituted by another person. And they create a strong love bond with them. And they're not going to be replaced by another dog. So this are the things that we need to think about. It's not anthropomorphizing, it's a fact. You know, they do produce these hormones, they do have feelings, and we need to give them the same understanding. So I hope that for those experiencing issues with their dog around separation, are inspired and to understand things a little bit better after our conversation today. Thank you very much, Chantal.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me again.
And if people would like to contact you, how could they do that?
So I've got a website. It's www.canineseparation.com. that's my separation anxiety side of things. And then you can just book in a free 30-minute discovery call with me, just so I can find out more and everything. I've also got a free Facebook group as well. It's called Helping Dogs with Separation Anxiety. If you just type that on Facebook, that should come up as well. And I go weekly live on there just to chat about some aspect of separation anxiety, or give new members general advice and stuff as well. So
it's fantastic. Thank you for your wonderful work.
So thank you. And then you too.
So we're able to share that with everyone. Thank you so much. And I will be putting all the details that Chantal has just mentioned in the description box for this program. So thank you very much for watching. Next time, we are going to be looking at the wonderful story of Teddy, not my Teddy, but an assistance dog, with the author, Wendy Hilling, author of My Life in His Paws. And I hope you'll join me then.